Year of the Depend Adult Undergarment. Here's Hal Incandenza, age 17, with his little brass one-hitter, getting covertly high in the Enfield Tennis Academy's underground pump room and exhaling palely into an industrial exhaust fan. It's the sad little interval after afternoon matches and conditioning, but before the Academy's communal supper. Hal is by himself down here, and nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. Hal likes to get high in secret, but a bigger secret is that he's as attached to the secrecy as he is to getting high. A one-hitter, sort of like a long FDR-type cigarette holder whose end is packed with a pinch of good dope, gets hot and is hard on the mouth, the brass ones especially, but one-hitters have the advantage of efficiency. Every particle of ignited pot gets inhaled. There's none of the incidental second-hand type smoke from a party bowl's big load, and Hal can take every iota way down deep and hold his breath forever, so that even his exhalations are no more than slightly pale and sick, sweet-smelling. Total utilization of available resources equals lack of publicly detectable waste. The Academy's tennis court's lungs pump room is underground and accessible only by tunnel. ETA is abundantly, embranchingly, tunneled. This is by design. Plus, one-hitters are small, which is good because, let's face it, anything you use to smoke high-resin dope with is going to stink. A bong is big, and its stink is going to be like commensurately big. Plus, you have the foul bong water to deal with. Pipes are smaller and at least portable, but they always come with only a multi-hit party bowl that disperses non-utilized smoke over a wide area. A one-hitter can be wastelessly employed, then allowed to cool, wrapped in 2 baggies, and then further wrapped and sealed in a Ziploc, and then enclosed in 2 sport socks, in a gear bag along with the lighter, and eye drops, and mint pellets, and a little film case of dope itself, and it's highly portable and odor-free, and basically totally covert. As far as Hal knows, colleagues Michael Pemulus, Jim Struck, Bridget C. Boone, Jim Troeltsch, Ted Schacht, Trevor Axford, and possibly Kyle D. Coyle, and Tall Paul Shaw, and remotely, possibly, Franny Unwin, all know Hal gets regularly, covertly high. It's also not impossible that Bernadette Longley knows, actually. And of course the unpleasant Kay Freer always has suspicions of all kinds. And Hal's brother Mario knows a thing or two, but that's it, in terms of public knowledge. But even though Pemulus and Struck and Boone and Troeltsch and Axford, and occasionally, in a sort of medicinal and touristic way, Stice and Schacht, all are known to get high also, Hal has actually gotten actively high only with Pemulus, on the rare occasions he's gotten high with anybody else, as in person, which he avoids. He forgot. Ortho the Darkness Stice of Partridge, Kansas knows. And Hal's oldest brother Orrin, mysteriously, even long distance, seems to know more than he's coming right out and saying, unless Hal's reading more into some of the phone comments than are there. Hal's mother, Mrs. Avril Incandenza, and her adoptive brother Dr. Charles Tavis, the current ETA headmaster, both know Hal drinks alcohol sometimes, like on weekend nights with Troeltsch or maybe Axford, down the hill at clubs on Commonwealth Avenue. The Unexamined Life has its notorious blind bouncer night every Friday, where they card you on the honor system. Mrs. Avril Incandenza isn't crazy about the idea of Hal drinking, mostly because of the way his father had drunk when alive, and reportedly his father's own father before him in Arizona and California. But Hal's academic precocity, and especially his late competitive success on the junior circuit, make it clear that he's able to handle whatever modest amounts she's pretty sure he consumes. There's no way someone can seriously abuse a substance and perform at top, scholarly, and athletic levels, the ETA psych counselor Dr. Rusk assures her, especially the high-level athletic part. And Avril feels it's important that a concerned but unsmothering single parent know when to let go somewhat and let the two high-functioning of her 3 sons make their own possible mistakes and learn from their own valid experience, no matter how much the secret worry about mistakes tears her gizzard out. The mothers. And Charles supports whatever personal decisions she makes in conscience about her children. And God knows she'd rather have Hal having a few glasses of beer every so often than absorbing God alone knows what sort of esoteric designer compounds with reptilian Michael Pemulus and trail of slime-leaving James Struck, both of whom give Avril a howling case of the maternal phantods. And ultimately, she's told Doctors Rusk and Tavis, she'd rather have Hal abide in the security of the knowledge that his mother trusts him, that she's trusting and supportive and doesn't judge or gizzard tear or wring her fine hands over his having, for instance, a glass of Canadian ale with friends every now and again, and so works tremendously hard to hide her maternal dread of his possibly ever drinking like James himself, or James's father. All so that Hal might enjoy the security of feeling that he can be upfront with her about issues like drinking, and not feel he has to hide anything from her under any circumstances. Dr. Tavis and Dolores Rusk have privately discussed the fact that, not least among the phobic stressors Avril suffers so uncomplainingly with, is a black phobic dread of hiding or secrecy in all possible forms with respect to her sons. Avril and CT know nothing about Hal's penchants for high-resin Bob Hope and underground absorption, which fact Hal obviously likes a lot on some level, though he's never given much thought to why. To why he likes it so much. ETA's hilltop grounds are traversable by tunnel. Avril I, for example, who never leaves the grounds anymore, rarely travels above ground, willing to hunch to take the off-tunnels between Headmaster's house and her office next to Charles Tavis's in the Community and Administration Building. A pink, bricked, white-pillared, neo-Georgian thing that Hal's brother Mario says looks like a cube that has swallowed a ball too big for its stomach.
3.
Note number 3. This is rather a wordy one, so bear with me. A lot of words they're hard to pronounce. I practiced a few times, but there's a limit. Anyway, ETA is laid out as a cardioid, with the 4 main inward-facing buildings convexly rounded at the back of the sides to yield a cardioid's curve, with the tennis courts and pavilions at the center, and the staff and students parking lots in the parking lots in the back of the common administrative. It's actually written out as COMM.-AD. It's forming the little bashed-in dent that from the air gives the whole facility the Valentine heart aspect that still wouldn't have been truly cardioid if the buildings themselves didn't have their convex bulges all derived from arcs of the same small case r. A staggering feat given the uneven ground and wildly different electrical and plumbing conduit wall space required by dormitories, administrative offices, and polyresonance lung with a capital L. Pull-offable probably by, on the whole, East Coast one guy. ETA's original architect, Avril's old and very dear friend, the topology world's closed curve mapping Ubermensch. That is A.Y, in parentheses, vector field Ricky of Brandeis University, now deceased, who used to wow Hal and Mario in Weston by taking off his vest without removing the suit jacket, which M. Pemulus years later exposed as a cheap parlor trick exploitation of certain basic features of continuous functions, which revelation Hal mourned in a Santa's not real type of secret way, in which Mario simply ignored, preferring to see the vest thing as plain magic. End of Note 3.
2 sets of elevators and 1 of stairs run between the lobby, reception area, and administrative offices on ComEd's first floor and the weight room, sauna, and locker shower areas on the sublevel below it. 1 large tunnel of elephant-colored cement leads from just off the boys' showers to the mammoth laundry room below the west courts, and 2 smaller tunnels radiate from the sauna area south and east to the sub-basements of the smaller, sphero-cubular, proto-Georgian buildings, housing classrooms and sub-dormitories B and D. These 2 basements and smaller tunnels often serve as student storage space and hallways between various prorectors' private rooms.
4.
Note number 4. Those young staffers who double as academic and athletic instructors are, by convention, at North American Tennis Academies known as prorectors. End of Note 4.
Then 2 even smaller tunnels, navigable by any adult willing to assume a kind of knuckle-dragging simian posture, in turn connect each of the sub-basements to the former optical and film development facilities of Leith and Ogilvy, and the late Dr. James O. Incandenza, now deceased, below and just west of the headmaster's house. From which facilities there's also a fair-diameter tunnel that goes straight to the lowest level of the community and administration building, but its functions have gradually changed over 4 years, and it's now too full of exposed wiring and hot water pipes and heating ducts to be really passable. And to the offices of the physical plant, almost directly beneath the center row of ETA outdoor tennis courts, which offices and custodial lounge are in turn connected to ETA's lung storage and pump rooms via a pargeted tunnel hastily constructed by the Testar All-Weather Inflatable Structures Corp., which together, with the folks over at the ATH-SCME, Industrial Air Displacement Devices, erects and services the inflatable dendrourethane dome, known as the Lung, that covers the middle row of courts for the winter indoor season. The crude little rough-sided tunnel between plant and pump is traversable only via all-fours type crawling and is essentially unknown to staff and administration, popular only with the Academy's smaller kids' tunnel club, as well as with certain adolescents with strong secret incentive to crawl on all fours. The lung storage room is basically impassable from March through November because it's full of intricately folded dendrourethane lung material and dismantled sections of flexible ducting and fan blades, etc. The pump room is right next to it, though you have to crawl back out into the tunnel to get to it. On the engineering diagrams, the pump rooms may be about 20 meters directly beneath the centermost courts in the middle row of courts, and looks like a kind of spider hanging upside down. An unfenestrated oval chamber with 6 man-sized, curved ducts radiating up and out to exit points on the grounds above. And the pump room has 6 radial openings, 1 for each up-curving duct. 3 2-meter vents with huge turbine-bladed exhaust fans bolted into their grills, and 3 more 2Ms with reversed ATH-SCME intake fans that allow air from the ground above to be sucked down and around the room and up into the 3 exhaust vents. The pump room is essentially like a pulmonary organ, or the epicenter of a massive 6-vectored wind tunnel, and when activated roars like a banshee that slammed its hand in a door, though the PR's in full legit operation only when the lung is up, usually November to March. The intake fans pull ground-level winter air down into and around the room and through the 3 exhaust fans and up the outtake ducts into networks of pneumatic tubing in the lung's sides and dome. It's the pressure of the moving air that keeps the fragile lung inflated. When the quartz lung is down and stored, Hal will descend and walk and then hunch his way in to make sure nobody's in the physical plant quarters. Then he'll hunch and crawl to the PR, gear bag in his teeth, and activate just one of the big exhaust fans and get secretly high and exhale palely through its blades into the vent, so that any possible odor is blown through an outtake duct and expelled through a grilled hole on the west side of the west courts, a threaded hole with a flange, where brisk, white-suited ATHS-CME guys will attach some of the lung's arterial pneumatic tubing at some point soon, when Stitt et al. On staff decide the real weather has moved past enduring for outdoor tennis. During winter months, when any expelled odor would get ducted up into the lung and hang there conspicuous, Hal mostly goes into a remote subdormitory lavatory and climbs onto a toilet in a stall and exhales into the grill of one of the little exhaust fans in the ceiling. But this routine lacks a certain intricate subterranean covert drama. It's another reason why Hal dreads Interdependence Day and the approach of the Whataburger Classic and Thanksgiving and unendurable weather and the erection of the lung. Recreational drugs are, more or less, traditional at any U.S. secondary school, maybe because of the unprecedented tensions, post-latency, and puberty, and angst, and impending adulthood, etc., to help manage the intrapsychic storms, etc. Since the place's inception, there's always been a certain percentage of the high-caliber adolescent players at ETA who manage their internal weathers chemically. Much of this is good, clean, temporary fun, but a traditionally smaller and harder core set tends to rely on personal chemistry to manage ETA's special demands, dexedrine or low-volt methadrine.
5.
Note number 5. Usually known as drines, that is, lightweight speed, silert, tenuate, fastin, preludin, even sometimes Ritalin. It's worth an NB that, unlike Jim Troeltsch or the pre-Ludin-happy Bridget Boone, Michael Pemelis, out of maybe some queer sort of blue-collar street-type honor, rarely ingests any drines before a match, reserving them for recreation. Some people are wired to find heart-pounding, eye-wobbling drine stimulation recreational. Subnote A, which is actually noted after tenuate, which is a trade name of, bear with me on this pronunciation, diethypropion hydrochloride, Marion Merrill Dow Pharmaceuticals, technically a prescription anti-obesity agent, favored by some, in other words, diet pills, favored by some athlete for its mildly euphoric and resources rallying properties, without the tooth-grinding and hideous post-blood spike crash that the hairier-chested drines like fasting and silert inflict, though with a discomfiting tendency to cause post-spike ocular nystagmus. Nystagmus or no nystagmus, tenuate's is a particular favorite of Michael Pemelis, who hoards for personal ingestion every 75 milligram white tenuate capsule he can lay his hands on, and does not sell or trade them except sometimes to roommate Jim Troeltsch, who nags Pemelis for them and also goes into Pemelis' special entrepot yachting cap and promotes still more of them on the sly, a couple at a time, feeling that they help his sports color commentary loquacity, which secret promotions Pemelis knows about all too well, and is biding his time to retaliate. Never you fear. End of note 5.
Before matches, and benzodiazepines to come back down after matches.
6.
Note number 6. Lightweight tranks, Valium, Roman numeral 3, and Val Release, good old dependable Xanax, Dalmane, Buspar, Cerex, even Halcyon or Halcyon, legally available in Canada, unbelievably still, with those kids inclined toward a heavier slide. Reds, Miprospin, Happy Patch, Transdermals, Miltone, Stelzine, the odd injury script Darwin, never lasting more than a couple seasons for the obvious reason that serious tranks can make even breathing seem like too much trouble to go to. The cause of a meaty percentage of trank-related deaths being attributed off the record by emergency room personnel to PS, or pulmonary sloth. End of note 6.
With mudslides or blue flames at some understanding Commonwealth Avenue night spot.
7.
Note number 7. Top junior players are for the most part pretty cautious with alcohol, mostly because of the physical consequences of heavy intake, like nausea and dehydration and poor hand-eye interface, make high-level performance almost impossible. Very few other standard substances have prohibitive short-term hangovers, actually, though an evening of even synthetic cocaine will make the next day's dawn drills very unpleasant indeed, which is why so few of ETAs hardcore do cocaine. Though there's also the issue of expense. Though many ETAs are the children of upscale parents, the children themselves are rarely flush with cash from home, since the gratification of pretty much every physical need is either taken care of or prohibited by ETA itself. It's maybe worth noting that the same people hardwired to enjoy recreational drinks also tend to gravitate toward cocaine and methadone and other engine revers, while another broad class of more naturally higher strung types tend to be toward the edge beveling substances. That is, tranks, cannabis, barbiturates, and yes, alcohol. End of note 7.
Or beers and bongs in some discreet academy corner at night to short-circuit the up and down cycle. Mushrooms or X or something from the mild designer class.
8.
Note number 8. That is, psilocybin, happy patches. Subnote A. Homemade transdermals, usually MDMA or Muscimol, with DDMS or the over-counter available DMSO as the transmersal carrier. End of subnote. MDMA slash XS. Oh, ecstasy. M-ecstasy. Bad news, though, X. Various low-tech manipulations of the benzene ring in methoxy class. Psychedelics, usually home-makeable. Synthetic dickies like MMDA, DMA, DMMM, 2CB, para. 1 through 6, etc. Though note, this class doesn't and shouldn't include CNS rattlers like STP, DOM, the long infamous West U.S. Coast grievous bodily harm, gamma hydroxybutyric acid, LSD-25, or -32, or DMZ/M.P. Enthusiasm for this stuff seems independent of neurological type. End of note 8. Noto 8.
Or maybe, occasionally, a little black star.
9.
Note number 9. AKA LSD-25, often with a slight dry kicker added called Black Star, because in Metro Boston, the available acid usually comes on chip-sized squares of thin cardboard with a black stenciled star on them, all from a certain shadowy node of supply down in New Bedford. All acid and grievous bodily harm, like cocaine and heroin, come into Boston mostly from New Bedford, Massachusetts, which in turn gets most of its supply from Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is the true lower intestine of North America. Bridgeport, be advised if you've never been there. I'm going to correct pronunciation. I keep saying LSD-25. We normally know it as LSD-25. I think that's just your run-of-the-mill acid on the street today. End of note 9.
Whenever there's a match and demand-free weekend, to basically short out the whole motherboard and blow out all the circuits and slowly recover and be almost neurologically reborn and start the gradual cycle all over again. This circular routine, if your basic wiring's okay to begin with, can work surprisingly well throughout adolescence and sometimes into one's like early 20s before it starts to creep up on you. But so, some ETAs, not just Hal Incandenza by any means, are involved with recreational substances, is the point. Like who isn't at some life stage in the USA and interdependent regions in these troubled times for the most part? Though a decent percentage of ETA students aren't at all, i.e. involved. Some persons can give themselves away to an ambitious pursuit, and have that be all the giving themselves away to something they need to do. Though sometimes this changes as the players get older and the pursuit more stress-fraught. American experience seems to suggest that people are virtually unlimited in their need to give themselves away on various levels. Some just prefer to do it in secret. An enrolled student-athlete's use of alcohol or illicit chemicals is cause for immediate expulsion, according to ETA's admissions catalog. But the ETA staff tends to have a lot more important stuff on its plate than policing kids who've already given themselves away to an ambitious competitive pursuit. The administrative attitude under first James Incandenza and then Charles Tavis is like, why would anybody who wanted to compromise his faculties chemically even come here to ETA, where the whole point is to stress and stretch your faculties along multiple vectors?
10.
Note number 10. Like most sports academies, ETA maintains the gentle fiction that 100% of its students are enrolled at their own ambitious volition, and not that of, say, for instance, their parents, some of whom, tennis parents like the stage mothers of Hollywood legend, are bad news indeed. End of note 10.
And since it's the alumni pro-rectors who have the most direct supervisory contact with the kids, and since most of the pro-rectors themselves are depressed or traumatized about not making it into the show and having to come back to ETA and live in decent but subterranean rooms off the tunnels and work as assistant coaches and teach laughable elective classes, which is what the 8 ETA pro-rectors do when they're not off playing satellite tournaments or trying to make it through the qualifying rounds of some serious money event, and so they're morose and low on morale and feel bad about themselves often, as a rule, and so, also not all that surprisingly, tend to get high now and then themselves, though in a less covert or exuberant fashion than the hardcore students' chemical cadre. But so, given all this, it's not hard to see why internal drug enforcement at ETA tends to be flaccid. The other nice thing about the pump room is the way it's connected by tunnel to the pro-rector's rows of housing units, which means men's rooms, which means Hal can crawl, hunch, and tiptoe into an unoccupied men's room and brush his teeth with his portable Oral-B, and wash his face, and apply eye drops and Old Spice and a plug of wintergreen Kodiak, and then saunter back to the sauna area and ascend to ground level, looking and smelling right as rain. Because when he gets high, he develops a powerful obsession with having nobody, not even the neurochemical cadre, know he's high. This obsession is almost irresistible in its force. The amount of organization and toiletry lugging he has to do to get secretly high in front of a subterranean outtake vent in the pre-supper gap would make a lesser man quail. Hal has no idea why this is, or whence this obsession with the secrecy of it. He broods on it abstractly at times, when high. This no-one-must-know thing. It's not fear per se, fear of discovery. Beyond that, it all gets too abstract and twined up to lead to anything, Hal's brooding. Like most North Americans of his generation, Hal tends to know way less about why he feels certain ways about the objects and pursuits he's devoted to than he does about the objects and pursuits themselves. It's hard to say for sure whether this is even exceptionally bad, this tendency.